This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players and the underdogs in sports. And our Moonlighter for today is a guy that checks a lot of the boxes in the Moonlight Graham Show Moonlighter checklist. He's from small-town Iowa. He played junior college baseball. He sold insurance for a little bit. He doubled off of me, which most of the state of Iowa has done at this point. He is now the associate head coach at the University of Iowa. His name is Marty Sutherland. Marty Sutherland is a guy that actually I first met by playing against him when he was playing for the Cascade Reds out of Cascade, Iowa, where Marty is from. And I was actually pitching for the Dyersville Whitehawks in the Worthington tournament, a small-town Iowa baseball tournament over in eastern Iowa. And this had to have been about 16 years ago now is when Marty and I first met. The first time I met him, he doubled off me, like I said. Well, a couple of months after that introduction, Marty was actually one of the coaches that I played for at the University of Northern Iowa. And while I was at UNI, Marty was maybe the smartest baseball guy I've ever been around. And I learned so much about the game of baseball just from being around him in the dugout every day for 2 years. And it's been awesome. I mean, awesome to see the success that he continues to have now at the University of Iowa. And it's cool for me because when I look at the Iowa baseball coaching staff, I see a lot of guys that I really like and I know, and I played for a couple of them. So Rick Heller, of course, is the head coach. Marty Sutherland is the associate head coach. Both those guys were the top two guys at UNI when I was there. Scott Brickman was the pitching coach at Iowa for a few years. He was the pitching coach at UNI when I was there. But they have Robin Lund, who was a UNI guy, who's now the pitching coach at Iowa as well. And, of course, Nick Ungs, who's been on the podcast. He's a Panther. And he's on that coaching staff at Iowa as well. So it's so awesome to see the success that Iowa baseball has had over the last 8-9 years now with that crew leading the program, knowing that now that they have institutional support, they've got funding, they've got great recruits, and you can see the type of program that they can build when they have all those resources at their disposal. And I love seeing the success that they've had. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode with Marty Sutherland. He's a baseball guy through and through. And you know what? He's a great podcast guest as well. Special thanks to our sponsors, the People's Company, peoplescompany.com. Check out Matt Adams and Andrew Zelmer. They are the best land brokerage guys in the game, just like how Marty Sutherland is the best associate head coach in college baseball. Enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter, Marty Sutherland. Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and that you need to be calling is the great Brian Sandvig. As you well know, Brian Sandvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Sandvig. Call Brian Sandvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. Marty Sutherland, first time, long time. Welcome to the pod, Marty.
Well, when you texted me this, Tim, we laughed about this because you have to be scraping the bottom of the barrel. I thought like early on in the Moonlight Graham podcast days, I'm like, oh, maybe I have a shot to get on there and we reminisce about you and I. But as this has progressed and you've gotten better guests and you're chasing down Kevin Costner's of the world, I just didn't think it would inevitably ever come back to me. So
you were one of those guys where it was always like, I feel like I got Marty in my back pocket. and then it struck me a couple weeks ago. I was like, how have I not had Marty on the pod yet? And the thing that really prompted this was I'm in the hospital for the birth of the twin boys. And we go in the morning of like May 25th. Iowa happens to be opening the Big Ten tournament at 9 a.m. that morning or 10 a.m. that morning. So we go in at 8. And I'm like, well, the Hawks play at 9, so I know what I'm going to be watching while Tori's in delivery. And ends up, you guys played at 9 that day, and then you played at like 9 the next day. So once again, we had the Twins at that point. I had nothing to do but watch baseball. As I'm watching those games, 2 things popped up. First of all, your ace pitcher in game 1 has a fly ball right over the catcher. Actually, no, it was fly ball
just on the first base
just
line.
on the first base side, but the catcher didn't really see it. He wasn't really in the play. The pitcher really had the best play for this, but then the third baseman came out of nowhere at the last second, calls him off, dives for it, and misses it in foul territory on the first base side. And I'm fuming in the hospital here and thinking, the pitcher's got to catch that ball. Now, I don't know if the pitcher's ever in a spot to really call anybody off, but there's a really small part of the baseball field where the pitcher is basically the only guy that has an easy play on the ball, and that was one of those examples. Marty, you are an infield coach. You are as good of a baseball guy as I've ever met. What are you guys teaching at Iowa for those type of plays?
That's the pitcher's deal. I'm not in on any of that stuff.
You're putting this on Ungs?
No, it's funny. We do pop-up communication like every team in America would do. And I pretty much most of the time am running the machine. And I specifically will try to find areas where the pitcher is forced to make a play. And there's nothing that would rile up your dugout more than a pitcher actually catching a pop-up. I agree with you. I think they need to be able to make the play. Now, that particular play, Peyton should have made the play, our first baseman. And he just kind of backed off because it was just, you had all the convergence happening. You had the catcher in the area, you had the pitcher in the area, you had both corner guys in the area. Perfect world, you want one of the guys who defend on a daily basis to make the play. But most of the time, these pitchers, it was Adam Mazur. Adam was a shortstop in high school. Most of these guys played positions. There are POs that we get that's all they've ever done, pitcher onlys. And so, yeah, there's certain guys you're just like, we don't want that guy around the ball. But there are times, like you said, the one that's right on top of the mound that maybe doesn't have a lot of arc to it or a lot of height.
The ball spinning back where it starts in foul territory right at the plate, and then the catcher has to find the ball and then backpedal. It's like just the pitcher should take that one too.
Yes, and the other thing you're seeing so much more now are shifts, right? You're having a lot of unbalanced defense, whether everybody's on the right side because they have a left-hander. Well, what if the guy hits a flare towards the third base dugout, a left-hand hitter? I mean, the pitcher may be the only one. It's you're out, dude. Like it's you're out on the mound. You can go get it. So I'm with you. It's something we talk about. Obviously, they can be called off by every player on the field. It's funny when growing up, I played for a great high school coach, a legendary high school coach, Cascade, Jerry Rowling. Now, we were all position players that just happened to be pitchers, but we could call the catcher off. That was the one thing. He allowed the pitcher to go in there and call the catcher off. And Coach Heller doesn't want any of that. Like, if the catcher can make the play, he'd rather the guy that does that stuff kind of for a living every day makes the play. But there are times like that one that the pitcher needs to go in and catch the ball.
The other thing I'd add there, too, is the guys on the field know who's on the mound.
Exactly, yes.
And if it's one of those guys that you don't want catching the ball, the corner guys especially know, hey, I got to come in here and make a play. But if it's a guy, and I was kind of assuming Mazur was this guy. I mean, he was phenomenal pitcher, one of the best pitchers in the Big Ten this year. I kind of expected him to kind of take charge and make that play because he's the ace and, he gets outs and he really values outs. He's not afraid of that moment. So I was a little bit surprised. The other point that I thought of you, Marty, and I actually tweeted about this. I'm not sure if you saw this or not because I tweeted your name out. I think it was in your last game of the Big Ten tournament, and all of a sudden the umpire goes from the mound and is checking the other pitcher for substance on his glove, maybe?
Yep.
And right away I said, this smells like Marty Sutherland's doing. Was it you
I
wish
I could really take the credit. I didn't. There's so much film now, right? I mean, every time you go into series, I mean, you have pretty much every pitch that guy has thrown. So that's something you feel like you may pick up, in the course of just watching film. We didn't. We had not seen him in the regular season. We played Michigan. He didn't pitch. He was a guy who had really done well for him past. He was a part of that World Series team, big part as a freshman. So he'd been a guy that had been successful. Well, the back half of the season, he had really started to pitch better. But I didn't think anything else of it other than, hey, he's just kind of figured some stuff out. So our right fielder, Keaton Anthony, Big Ten Freshman of the Year. So guys who have never seen the park in Omaha, the bullpens are in the outfield. So Keaton's playing right field. Michigan's in the first base dugout. Their bullpen is in right field. Keaton comes in and says, Marty, that guy is loading his glove up. I go,
like he could
what?
see him doing it?
Yes. They had a pine tar rag. He goes, he is loading his glove up. I'm telling you, it's loaded up. I go, really? He goes, yes. Okay. So I go to the home plate umpire, and his name is Danny. I said, Danny, I don't want to start this show, but our right fielder said he's loading his glove up with pine tar. I said, so you just got to pay attention. By the time I get back, Keaton's told everybody in our dugout, so everybody's on it. So he hits the first batter, and then every time he's got a system, he's turning his back to the home plate umpire, and just really, really fast, it's kind of on the pinky side of his glove, kind of on that outer edge of the glove, and he's just rubbing it real quick and then rubbing the ball. And it's obvious to anybody who's looking for it. Now, if you weren't looking for it, I don't know. The base umpires maybe, but I don't think the home plate guy could have seen it. So he goes 2-2 count, and I'm just like, he's doing every time. I yell, Danny, you got to go look. You got to go look. And he's just looking at me like, I really have to go look? I was like, yeah, you got to go look. And so he obviously calls time and goes out there, and I can't imagine what Willie Weiss was the pitcher, what he was thinking at the time. He's thinking like, oh man, where can I run to? And then obviously they checked the glove, and I saw a picture of the glove later, like when I was out recruiting. Another coach had got a picture of the glove that somebody had sent him, and it was just totally caked on.
Well, if the right fielder can see it into the bullpen.
Well, he was applying it.
Okay.
So he wasn't like he saw it on the glove, but once they saw the glove, it was just like, oh man, this is pretty obvious. The thing that stinks is the hitter doesn't get a new count.
Yeah, it's still a 2-2 count.
It's still a 2-2 count, which in my mind, it should be at least he should get his base. You've proven that, there was, for lack of a better term, cheating. I don't, whatever.
Gamesmanship, Marty.
Yes, but here's the thing. That doesn't work me up in today's world. It just, they were super obvious and he got caught. You know, I don't look at it as any other thing other than he got caught doing it. I don't think it's like, oh man, these guys, I don't think of it that way. But
I was late to the game on the pine tar thing.
Yeah.
Going into my senior year of college at UNI, I'm playing with the Waterloo Bucks. I set the single-season loss record that year for the Bucks.
Wasn't your fault.
It wasn't my fault. It was Dan Fitzgerald just kept putting me out there. What's that guy know about baseball?
Yeah.
And no offense, Dan. And all of a sudden, all these guys with black gloves on my team, they had all their strings caked in pine tar. Mm-hmm. And about halfway through the season, I'm saying, oh, man, that's a pretty good idea because you can't tell at all. Black pine tar and black strings. So I was a little late to that game. If I would have figured that earlier, man, I might have had an extra year of indie ball in me.
Well, it's funny because your kind of arsenal would have been good because you could always spin a breaking ball.
Yeah.
That was so for people that don't know a ton of baseball, the faster you can spin the baseball, the better it's going to be from an RPM standpoint. And the pine tar allows you to do that because of the tack is just going to allow your fingers to stay on the ball a little bit longer. Your fastball would have had probably a little more ride because you had a fairly straight fastball.
Really straight.
But it was probably pretty efficient. And we just didn't know the things then that we know now. And obviously you had spider tack with the big leagues. You had all this stuff. This stuff's been going on because we understood what it could do.
I wish we would have had some of that, not because I think it would have made me a major leaguer or anything, but it would have just been so much fun as a pitcher to have some of that data.
Yeah.
I remember one bullpen I did with Brickman where we were working on my slider one time. He just set up a garbage can. And he set up 2 garbage cans, and he said, start your slider off here and end it here from one garbage can to the next. And I just threw 40 sliders in a row in a bullpen. And that was my bullpen.
Yeah.
And today, you'd be able to look at the data on every one of those pitches, figure out, okay, hey, that one, what'd you do there, right? That's how we want to remember that one. And we had none of that.
Well, you just really have a true understanding once you know the arsenal of a pitcher, how they should pitch. Back in your day, you never pitched up in the zone. Like everything should be down in the zone. Well, we know that there's certain fastballs that don't want to be down in the zone. Anytime it's down, it gets hammered. It needs to be up and pitching above the belt and just some of those things that we just never knew. Now all of these, from Rapsodo to TrackMan to all these devices that we have and data that we truly understand, you just have a better idea of understanding how a guy needs to pitch.
So when I was watching the Big Ten tournament, I didn't get to see you guys all that much this year, but I watched when I could. But watching the Big Ten tournament, I was really impressed, and I'm not just here trying to blow smoke with you, Marty, but it seemed like
you should, though.
It seemed like you got the better coach team, and you guys did the right things in every game that I watched.
You played for Coach Heller.
Yes.
Okay. I've been with him now. I played for him for 2 years, and now I've been with him for 17 or 18 as a coach, whatever. That's who he is. That's what he believes in. Those are the pillars of our program, is preparation. And yes, we may not have the most talented team every time we take the field, but we'll be prepared. We're going to do the little things the right way. We're not going to beat ourselves, at least not consistently. And if you do that things in a sport with a round bat and a round ball, you're going to put yourself in a better position to win. And you're right. That's important to us because if we just sit back and just let them do what they want to do, or just let them play, you do that. But you know what I mean. If we don't concentrate on those things that we concentrate on, we'll get beat. We'll get beat a lot.
The margin of error is so thin.
Correct.
That when you watch a season of baseball from the dugout, you realize how those little things add up over the course of the season. And I remember the first time it really struck me by how much it mattered was when we were at UNI. We went to Wichita State.
Mm-hmm.
Wichita State was a good team. They had multiple big leaguers. I think they had 3 big leaguers on the team. They had Dusty Coleman, Andy Dirks, and
Gillespie, probably.
Connor
right?
Gillespie.
Yeah.
So those guys were all big league guys. So they had more talent than us. But the rest of the roster was, I don't know, Valley guys.
Yeah.
But they took every extra base. Every time that there was a chance to go to first to third, they did it. Every time there was a ball in the dirt, that they did it. And I remember thinking, these guys aren't that much better than us, but then you'd walk away and they won 2 out of 3 games, and it was just because they took the extra base 4 more times than we did throughout the weekend. And ultimately, that ended up being the difference.
Super fine line every year on what type of year you have. And, the years that everything is really good, you win those kind of 50-50 games because you just got an extra hit, you took an extra 90, you got on defense, you got a line drive double play, you had something happen in your favor. The times that you don't win those games, you're on the losing end of that. You give up the 2-out hit, you can't clutch up, when you need to, you can't get a bunt down, you can't execute, you can't take an extra 90. That's baseball. And especially with us, I mean, we track free bases every year, every game. Same form that you remember at UNI is hanging in our dugout. Who gives up the most walks and hit by pitches? Who makes the most errors? Who gives up, balks and stolen bases and balls in the dirt? And it's a tale as true as time. When we keep that under 5 for a game, we probably have an 850 to 900 winning percentage. And as soon as it starts climbing into that 6 to 10 range or 10 plus, you become a 50-50 team. You become a 500 team. And that's the concentration. That's the message these guys are continuing to hear is if you force the other team to beat you by not giving them free stuff, whether it be all that stuff we talked about, you're going to have a great chance to win the game.
Let's go back to when we were together at UNI.
Yep.
Great days.
Good days. Great days, I should say.
Great days.
Yes.
They canceled the program.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there the day after they cancel the program in old Chicago with Brett Douglas and and Gabe Schultz drinking
Nick
that
Kirk.
bar and Nick Kirk
yep.
drinking that bar out of beer, did you ever think you were going to coach baseball again at that point?
At that point, yes. I thought, it was still pretty fresh, and I didn't know where, but I thought it'd end up back there. But the stress of that whole year did really, I did really start to think about, man, if I just had a normal job, what would that look like? And, after 5 o'clock every day, the job's over, and you don't think about the job until you wake up the next day. And once you get to a weekend, you don't have to be at a tournament watching, kids play and do all that stuff. So at that moment, I felt I would still be a baseball coach of some sort. Then obviously, as time went away, Rick gets the job at Indiana State. It doesn't work for me to go there for a variety of reasons, none of which were bad. It just didn't work. He got that job in like August. I can tell you, turning 30, living with my mom was not how I envisioned life. But, I ended up getting into the private sector or into the insurance world. We talked a little bit about this before we got on here, similar to what you do, but just on the trucking side. Now, during that course of 4 years that I was there, yes, by the year 2, 3, 4, I didn't think that I would be back in baseball. Sooner or later, you just look at it and say, well, this isn't going to work out unless – now, I helped out at the high school level. I did lessons and stuff to kind of stay in it. But as far as being a college coach, a high-level college coach, no, I thought that ship had sailed well beyond to the point where I was going to be able to do that again.
What was it like looking at yourself in the mirror?
Well, that's never
being
good.
like, yeah, and being like, I'm an insurance guy.
Yeah.
Looks worse? Looking at yourself in the mirror, being like, I'm 30 and live with my mom, or
Yeah.
looking at yourself in the mirror and be like, I'm an insurance guy.
None of which was great. Here's what I'll tell you. I loved working at Cottingham and Butler and Dubuque. I worked with great people. I was playing. I played town team stuff, so I get my fix a lot. And they allowed me to coach at the high school level and leave work early here and there. So I was still involved, but it just wasn't my life anymore, like it is now again. So it was just different. I thought of myself as a baseball coach, happening to work, as an account manager with trucking firms. So I was able to keep my fix and work with young guys, which is that's why we all got into coaching, was because you just love to work with guys and you love to see the improvement. You love to see them working hard and then it paying off for them, right, and translating to some success on the field. And that's why we all get in it. I mean, our job now feels like that may be at no more than 50% of what the job is. But back when you're doing the kind of individual lessons, you're at the high school level, that's 85% of the job, and you do miss that part of it to a degree just because of, just, I guess, the fast lane we live in now in college athletics and our sport. That's just a small part. It's more than a small part, but it's just a part of it.
When you went from coaching Division I baseball at UNI to going back coaching high school, doing lessons for maybe 10-year-old kids, when I've coached at Johnson, coached at Dowling, I kind of got lucky where I could coach at programs that really run their baseball programs at the high school level like college programs. Mm-hmm. So I was able to kind of fit in and coach at a level that I was comfortable with. Yeah. I don't know how good I'd be at coaching sixth graders because
you wouldn't want to try it,
right? But I think that's a lot harder.
You
to
have
coach
it coming here, by the way.
Yeah.
In a few years.
Well, yeah. I'll pay somebody else to coach them when they're in sixth grade. I'll take them when they're
until
older.
You watch what's going on. You're like, no.
But it was easier for me to come in and these guys are college ready type of players, so I can coach them like that. How hard was it for you to spend all this time at high level baseball and then essentially try to go back to the basics with some of these kids?
Not very. And I think similar to what you just talked about, I grew up in a community, Cascade, where baseball was important. It was important from the time that you remembered competing with anything. It was important in the community. It was certainly important in my family. My mom's side of the family had baseball all over it. Guys, cousins that played college prior to me. So it was kind of like what we did. You came from Fort Dodge and basketball and just a lot of things that were really important. And baseball was too. But so from that standpoint, you had kids who knew the game. It wasn't like it was like, oh, this is just the farmer whose kid's playing baseball and doesn't really know what's going on. I mean, these kids knew how to play, and they were successful leading up into the high school program. So that part of it, and Coach Rowling was the coach at Cascade for 30 some years, won over 1,000 games. I mean, there's three guys in Iowa that have done that, and probably not many more in the nation with Denny Olenzak and Gene Schultz and Coach Rolling. Tom Jenks Jr. I think ended up getting there before he passed. So it was important. It was embedded in the community. So I didn't really think of it like, oh man, I gotta go make chicken salad out of chicken. You know what? Like that wasn't what it was at all.
Yeah.
These kids knew how to do it. Now maybe they weren't all college players. They weren't. But I'm trying to think of that group that was there. It was like, who was it? And they weren't. I don't even know if they were, because it was after Colin and Colin Ray was there, and Nate Meyer and some guys who ended up playing college baseball. It was kind of that next group, and I don't even know if there were a lot of college baseball guys in that group, quite honestly. But they knew how to play.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You go watch a baseball game today, and if it's a 2A baseball game, there might be two guys on the field that know what they're doing.
Yes.
It might be. I feel like that's changed pretty rapidly, almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different. I mean, and again, it's community based. It really is. I mean, the same communities have the same schools have the good teams, and you can see that in every sport, because it starts with having a quality little league program, and then from that, naturally that feeder program becomes super important. So in the communities that, that particular sport is something that they all value, you just see it happening at lower levels, and you get into other communities and it's just not like that. And they have coaches that don't really know the game, and they're out there just kind of doing it for something to do in the summer.
Yeah.
And it's really evident when you walk in to watch a game what you're getting into pretty quickly, just by how they go about their business.
A lot of them are just trying to copy another AAU coach that they saw and thought was cool at a tournament one time.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot of things I would say. As far as, I don't want to say coaching's easier, because it's not, but like there's so many more ways to get information and to get from drills to just more ways to get knowledge than ever before, right? And it's not all great knowledge. You have to pick through all the mess. There's plenty of mess out there.
Right.
But man, there's a lot of the good stuff. I get a ton of stuff from Twitter and from social media that we use in practice every day. I'll show up as like, Coach Heller, do you see this? And
you can follow Tom House on Twitter and just essentially get the Tom House workout program from his last 100 tweets.
That we were watching on VHS in 87.
Or who's the former manager of the Rangers, third base coach for the Braves? Ron Washington.
Oh yeah.
Like you could, as a kid, none of that was accessible to you. It was like watching what Ron Washington does from an infield standpoint every day.
Yep.
And now it's like almost everybody's doing that stuff. And
Jerry Weinstein's another great one that's been around the game his whole life that puts out great stuff.
All right, so you're coaching high school baseball. Rick Heller goes from Indiana State, where he had a really good short run there, and he gets the Iowa job. And for most Iowa baseball guys, and I know for Rick, this was the job that he wanted. This was the dream job. How does it come to be that he gets you off of your pile of money that you're making on the insurance world to come back into the baseball world?
I got what I should do. I was really caught in between, meaning I don't want to be the guy asking for a job. I haven't been in it for 4 years. I would go to Terre Haute and stay with Rick and Rachel and their daughter Viv every spring. I mean, he was a guy that I constantly still talked to. Was in their wedding. So I felt really awkward and not knowing what to do. And I sat there at my computer when he got the job at Cottingham and Butler, and I'm just like, what do I do here? I don't know what the right call is. And then hearing he was going to hire Scott Brickman to come back, and he was a pitching coach our last 2 years.
You're like, he's getting the band back together.
Yeah, it's like, okay. And I just said, I won't be able to sleep at night if I just don't reach out. I won't want to know what could have been if I didn't ask. And so I simply just texted him. I said, hey, Rick, you do not have to do anything with this. But I worded it exactly like I just told you. I need to be able to sleep at night. If you're willing to talk to me about, coming back and coaching at Iowa, I would love the opportunity to talk to you about that. But totally understand if it doesn't work. There are no hard feelings. We're all good. He texted me back pretty much right away, and he said, hey, Marty, thanks for reaching out. Like, yes, I'd be interested, but here's the deal. I got to take Brian Smiley with me, who was his recruiting coordinator at Indiana State. And Brian had done an awesome job with Rick and is a great coach. And he just goes, but I got to take him with me. He's already with me. Basically, they were going to hire him. So I'm thinking, this was like on a Thursday, and I'm thinking, well, there it goes. Like, that's my last shot, right? I mean, now I am in insurance for the rest of my life. And so a few days go by, and Rick calls me. He's like, hey, are you still interested? I go, yeah. Well, actually, Justin Schulte, head coach at Southeastern, really good friend of mine, he had texted me and said, hey, is Smiley gone? Like, is Smiley going back to Indiana State? And I go, yeah, I hadn't heard anything. And then within the day, Rick's calling me and saying, hey, are you still interested? Brian decided to go back to Indiana State. They hired Mitch Hannes, who was his junior college coach. Brian's wife's originally from Evansville, really liked her job, had a good situation. They wanted to keep her. So he had all of these things working. And Brian left and went back. And so Rick calls me and he's like, hey, you want to come down here tomorrow to talk about this? It's like a Sunday. And I was like, certainly. So I go down there. And it's an awkward deal, right? To have like any type
one of your best friends.
Yeah, it's like, what's this interview process going to be like? And I left there thinking, I don't even know if I did anything to promote myself or to give him a feeling that I could come back after being out 4 years and do it. And so, days went by and I didn't really know what was going on. I'm texting Scott. Scott and I are still really good friends. I'm like, what's the deal? Do I have a shot at this? And he says, I know, I think you got a shot, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm sitting at work. And he calls me, and he's just like, hey, if I offer you this, are you going to do it? I said, yes. He goes, okay, let's do it. I hang up my phone. I go to my boss. I said, hey, I need to meet with you right now. Go in the conference room. I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I'm going to go and be a coach at Iowa. Wait a second now. A really good guy, the boss was. It was just, blew his eyebrows back a little bit. And he goes, well, sleep on it. I was like, okay, I'll sleep on it. But it was done deal.
Best night of sleep of your life.
They were great to me at Cotty and Butler, and they're just great. They couldn't be happier for me, and so yeah, that whirlwind, that would have been the summer of 2013. I think my first official day was maybe like August 29th or something like that.
Did you grow up a Hawk fan?
Yes, I grew up an Iowa fan. Yes, baseball wasn't. My cousin Shane played for Iowa in the early '90s with Dane and Hughes, and that group was a really good player. So I knew about Iowa baseball. That was my dream, to play baseball at Iowa. Really followed basketball and football and wrestling were the three things I really knew a lot about. Then I never got the opportunity to play at Iowa. They kicked the tires a couple times, but that's all it got. Went to Kirkwood, and then went to UNI. Rick made the horrible decision to recruit me to play at UNI. Man, he's been paying for it ever since. But anyway, my time at UNI I really became a UNI fan. I really followed basketball. Mac was the coach there from Cascade, and then to Jake, and then football got to be friendly with a lot of those coaches as I got to be a coach there, and I was way more off the Iowa train. UNI played Iowa. I was all in on UNI, and even my early playing days, that was a hard pill for me to swallow. It was still kind of an Iowa fan. But by the end of UNI, it certainly was where my heart was at. So to come back, it wasn't hard, to stoke the fire again. It's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of pride, in being an Iowa Hawkeye and things like that. So it's been a lot of fun in that regard, growing up in Iowa. Rick grew up in Little Eldon, Iowa. I grew up in Cascade, Iowa. And so being able to coach at especially now as a baseball school, your flagship baseball school in your own state is something that is pretty great.
One thing I really like about you guys, and when I say that, I mean Rick Heller, I mean Marty Sutherland, I mean Scott Brickman, Nick Ongs, Robin Lund. You guys are all very loyal. And that, maybe that, I feel like that starts with Rick, but it kind of bleeds into everyone else. And it's like, man, if you do right by these guys, they're going to do right by you. And even just some of the texts that you have through the years or reaching out to guys, like, man, now that there's no longer a program at UNI, there's no reason for me to go back. I don't go back. I think many of us don't go back. Not like I hate UNI or anything. There's just no reason for me to go back anymore. But I still feel like I have a tie to the program because I have a tie to the guys that I played with, to the coaches that I have. And those relationships, whether it's with you guys or Brickman or Heller or Gabe Schultz, Brandon Douglas, any of those guys, those things run really deep. And even though that program no longer exists, I feel like the time we spent there was real and it meant something.
Well, that's really important to all of us that you guys are a part of this. We really believe that. And it's great when we have a golf outing and Kevin Swatsky comes back and other guys that played baseball at UNI come back and go on our golf outing, because that is important to Rick. That's important to me, that this is your program now. It really is. I know you guys didn't play at Iowa, but we wouldn't be here without you guys. We wouldn't be here without all the things that you did for us. And you 2 years at UNI and other guys 4 years. Going back to the loyalty thing with Rick, Robin and I would not be Division I baseball coaches if it wasn't for that part. If Rick wasn't loyal to people, why the hell else would he hire somebody who has been out of it for 4 years and in insurance? Robin, being a professor at UNI for 18 years, he hires him as the pitching coach. What are you doing? What he's doing is like, hey, these guys are my guys. These guys are loyal to me, and I know that is the number one thing that I need to find in an assistant coach, because I know my vision will be their vision. And anytime you hire somebody you don't necessarily know, that's always a question. And it doesn't mean it wouldn't work out. You just never know. And Rick's always been loyal to those people, and certainly is the way that I feel I would be, mostly because of him, mostly because of Jerry Rowling and Al Marshall, my coaches in high school, because that's the type of people they were. But we certainly think of our UNI baseball guys and that group part of the Iowa baseball family. It's important to us. And I know all of you guys now have kids, and it's weird for me to see all this stuff happening, but it wouldn't be any happier people on earth when you guys show up to games because of how important you guys were to us.
I appreciate that. So now that you've been at Iowa for close to 10 years now, and you've seen college baseball continue to grow, and I'm sure there's more funding at Iowa than you had at UNI, and you've gotten talent, and you've had success. At UNI, it kind of felt like every year was just a battle to maybe get the budget that you needed, to get the schedule that you needed, to make ends meet from a fundraising standpoint. I'm sure you have some of that you still deal with in amateur athletics. There's always some of that. But you also got a pretty good thing going. What's it like to be on this train right now where you're getting really good talent? You got a pipeline of guys in the minor leagues right now, and you're putting on one good season after the next. And you get, Iowa baseball is a program that's really on the rise. Yeah, and we're proud, right? We're proud of the consistency that we've had in the 9 years. We won over 30 games every year outside of, 2 COVID years. We've finished second in the league a couple times. We've won a conference tournament championship, been in a couple regionals. We're proud, but we're certainly nowhere close to satisfied. And that's the other thing I love about Rick. He's never satisfied, and he's always trying to improve the program from every facet that you could imagine. Experience for your players, which is as much as probably the number one thing, from their locker room to their equipment to their travel experiences to their hotels. All of that stuff we're trying to be among the best at and give them a great experience, but also understanding that we need to get better. And, not being in a regional again, however we want to dissect not being in one this past year, we obviously believe we should have been in one, but we don't make that decision, which means we're not where we need to be. And so that's the fight every day. And we got to continue to find ways to improve. And that's Rick going out and fundraising and trying to build this next piece of the stadium that's getting really close. But for him, all of the problems are relative, right? You go to a different place, it's just a whole new set of problems. At UNI, it was Rick needs to raise money for us to actually do what we need to do to play the season. To have a team.
To have the team. He had to raise half the budget. We're at Iowa, okay, we don't have to do that. But now we got to keep up with all these other programs that are building new stadiums, that are traveling great and are doing all these wonderful things. So it's like, okay, now it's not raising for the budget, but he's trying to raise to build a stadium, and he's trying to do all these things. So the stresses are, you're still super stressed,
We used to play games in the Unidome.
Yeah.
Like, there weren't much of games.
We kind of remember. I can remember that day we just said, "Screw it, we're just going to hit," and Feather just absolutely destroyed a ball into the windows up there. I don't think it broke anything, but it's like the first time we do it. And I remember Heather Costello. Heather is Leon Costello is now at like Montana or Montana State as the AD, but Heather was kind of the facilities person. And I remember her kind of walking through like, what in the hell are these guys doing? We said, screw it, we don't care. We're just doing it. And so, yeah.
Well, because the way it was set up, right field was super, super short.
Yeah.
Was like 110 feet.
Yeah.
And left field was 450 feet. Feather being a big left-handed power hitter, it was shocking at how quickly it got to the top of the Unidome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. Well, the other thing that I bring up, and have you had this at Iowa? Because Heller was classic for, he'd see a guy playing catch with a football or playing catch with a baseball in the dome, just regular students, and just going up, and then they'd be at practice the next day. Like, we had an ROTC kid that was just left-handed, and he showed up for practice for like 3 weeks and then kind of disappeared. I don't know if he went off to war or what happened to that kid.
We've had Grant Leonard, who is, I don't know, did he end up breaking he may not end up breaking the career saves record, but it was really close. Grant was a walk-on, emailed us, had gone to North Central, which is a Division III.
Was he from Pella?
No, he's an Illinois kid.
Okay.
And we're just like, yeah, Grant, come try, low mid-80s righty, thinking there's no chance. And
Judkins was who? Yeah.
Judd was from Pella, thinking there's no chance for Grant to make it. And he ends up being a huge factor. Ryan Erickson, another guy from Mason City, big left-hander, 6'3", won a game in the 2017 regional. We beat Houston in the first game. Ryan was the winning pitcher, starter. Just emailed out of the blue. And we don't do tryouts. We don't do those at Iowa. We have roster limits, so we recruit the whole roster. But a couple of these guys, Rick's just like, hey, we'll give them the fall. And they turn out to be really big, have great careers. Ryan got to pitch professionally. Grant met his wife. She's a pitcher on the softball team. I don't know if they're married yet. It's coming up if they aren't. So just great experiences. Rick is one of the best, most socially gifted people I've ever met. He can go up to anybody, and one, he knows so many people that it's 6 degrees of separation with Rick. It's not Kevin Bacon anymore. It's Rick Heller, and you can trace it back. But he is so good at that part with everybody, and there's no person that will stop by the field, practice or anything that Rick will not go up and talk to, and he may not know that person from Adam, and he's so great at that.
Do you think Heller is on the Frank Thomas Nugenics stuff?
Maybe. No, he's not.
I saw a picture of him the other day, and I was like, he looks the same as he did 10 years ago. I know he gets his weights in.
Yep.
He works out. He's got a long, loose stride, which we all see every inning.
It's an interesting stride.
It's an interesting stride.
He thinks he has perfect running form.
He runs like a guy that used to dunk.
He's the only person on this green earth that thinks he has perfect running form. Everybody will come up to me and is like, is that real? Is that the way he runs down third? I was like, yeah. And go ask him how great he thinks it is.
The heels kick the butt every time.
Yep.
But do you think he's on the eugenic stuff?
You need to ask him. Maybe. Who knows with him?
I wouldn't. I'm like 3 years away from it, so I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
I don't think he is. He's got the long, slender body type. You see his two older daughters. They're built just like him. His youngest daughter, Viv, built just like him. Just legs, just a lot of legs going on in that family. And so Rick's going to be 58, I believe, this fall. But yeah, he
looks good.
He's just a spry. He would tell you that he's, he can't go do the things he'd like to do as much anymore. Like, he'd still love to play. That's how that guy's wired. If the Red Top would take him back for a weekend, he would try to play. He still does dry swings every once in a while on the side at practice just to see how it looks. He would tell you that he did dry swings till he's 39 years old in his driveway when he had to recruit all summer just so he was ready to play. He's a weirdo.
One thing that you were great at was, and we talked about this at the start, was with the pitcher loading up his glove, but you were so good at picking up pitchers tipping pitches. When did you learn that skill?
I can tell you the first time I noticed it, I was playing on a big field for the first time as an 8th grader. They put this little travel team together at the end of the summer, not even travel team. We were going to go play in Epworth. And it was, I don't even know who I was playing, if it was like a Cascade team or what. But we played, and we were facing this pitcher, and he was holding the ball behind his back, and he threw a splitty. And I just
Eighth
looked.
Grader was throwing a splitty?
Well, I was in it was in high school.
You're playing ahead.
Yes, I was playing up, and I just looked at it. I'm like, okay, he threw a splitty. The next time he didn't have a splitty grip. He had a four-seam grip. He threw a fastball. I'm like, oh, well, maybe the answers to the test are like right in front of me at times. From that point on, no, and that was the easiest one, right? Somebody, when they're in the stretch position, a lot of guys will hold the ball behind their back. It's visible to the hitter. And this still happens in college now. And they'll grip what they're going, or they'll start with the grip, and they'll go off of that grip, meaning they're going to a breaking ball. If they hold the grip, they're staying with their fastball. Or you can start to see them put their fingers in a position where it looks like a changeup.
Right. I would always start with the changeup because it was my toughest grip,
Yep.
and then I'd move to either fastball, curveball, which is pretty simple. And I didn't throw the change much, so I was always kind of moving it a little bit. But yeah, so usually during a game, you would have something on the pitcher, whether the hitter could do anything with it. You would have something with the pitcher by the second or third inning.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still the case?
A lot of times, and you have so much video now, so this just adds a whole nother piece to it. That a lot of times I can go into a game, and we have a scout. We do a scout every morning after breakfast, leading into a game, or after our batting practice if we're at home, and I can show them video. It's like, hey, this is what I'm talking about. A lot of stuff in their glove, right? When you're young, it was always, if he's messing in his glove, he's going to a grip and he's going to throw a breaking ball. So that was kind of the elementary side of it. But now it's, it's different stuff that they do. The way they hold their glove and how they come set happens a lot. They come set in different positions. So there's a ton of different stuff over time that I know what to look for. And it's kind of like I can just watch a pitcher, and if they do something different, I may not be able to put my finger on it right now, but I know they did something different. Like, hey, that looked different. Mm-hmm. All right, so now I have to pay attention to this and see if it happens all the time. Does it? Ooh, no, he's doing the same thing on his fastball. Okay, that's not going to help us. But a lot of times there's not, and there's a lot of stuff. We could have a whole pod. In fact, I did one with Gary Rima a long time ago where that's all we did for the whole – this was not a pod. This was on his radio show on Press Row. He was doing it when we were at UNI, and we did. That's all we talked about was pitch tipping. And it still happens. You can get it from a wide variety. You can get it from infielders. You can get it from the catcher, how he sets up. You can get it from stealing stuff from coaches.
Yeah, the glove tilts,
yep.
the fanning the glove. Yep. I remember you told me one time, I'm not sure if you remember this, but we were playing at Creighton. And I think you thought that Creighton was getting my pitches because you had them. And I was tilting my glove, so basically showing the third base coach my grips when I was in the windup, not the stretch.
Yep.
And I'd never thought about that because I was always pretty cognizant in the stretch because obviously there's a runner on base. Mm-hmm. I got the ball behind my back to start off with. And then the windup, I was getting lazy and basically showing the third base coach my grip from there, and then you caught it. By that time, Darren Ruff had already hit a home run off me, so it didn't matter. But
he's a big leaguer, no big deal.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of big leaguers, how many big leaguers have you coached, if any?
Oh, Colin and
Colin Ray, yeah,
and Nick Allgaier. Nick got up last year. He was our first Iowa guy that got up, and so that I think those are maybe the only two. Brandon never making it. Brandon Douglas never making it shocks me to this day. We have a couple guys. Robert Newstrom, our outfielders in AAA with Baltimore. Mason McCoy's in AAA with Seattle.
Both those guys feel like they might be on the verge.
Yes, I think Robert for sure. Mason got traded, which was a good thing for him. Trenton Wallace is really throwing well. I think he's a guy that has a really good chance to make it. But yeah, I mean, you know how it is. Pro ball is a fickle deal. I mean, you need to be in the right place at the right time. Nick Ungs was him never pitching in a big league game is beyond any of us. I mean, beyond any of our imaginations. He had success at every level. Jim McGrain was another one, pitched at Iowa. Got to AAA, was a AAA pitcher of the year. I can think back to a time Nick, Florida, somebody got hurt for the Marlins, and Nick he had just pitched, and they simply just brought up the guy who was next in line. I think it was Logan Kelling at the time. and he just happened to be the next guy. And if Nick just hadn't pitched and Nick was the next guy, Nick would have got a shot. And maybe Nick would have never left. So much of that's out of your control. And that's the frustrating part about professional baseball is so much of it is happenstance and luck that, you can be done with it and think Adam Boovey never making it, I went and watched him. He's on a team with Andrew McCutchen and Neil Walker, really good Pittsburgh farm team. He's hitting 3-hole. In AAA, then he gets the vertigo deal with his ear, and he never gets back. It sucks when you look at those stories.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question today, and Brandon obviously had a great minor league career, but never got the call. Jake Adams was a total stud of a college player. Not sure if he's ever gonna get all the way up through the minors like he needs to get to that level. It's just so hard. Like in Jake Adams, if he was a basketball player, he was kind of the equivalent of like Luka Garza.
Yeah.
He'd have been a second-round pick in the NBA, and he would have got 30 games in the NBA like Garza, and then he washes out of the league. But at least he played.
Yeah.
Now, Jake Adams, it was like the amount of improvement that guy needs to make just to get to where Robert Newstrom's at today is remarkable.
Every level you make is something pretty special. And obviously the final call to get to the big leagues, I can't imagine what that looks like. Jake's out, man. He got to Double-A.
Is he done?
Yeah, got hurt. Got hurt like I'm trying to think of it was his thumb, wrist, and they kind of pushed him back really fast, and it didn't go. And then he had a really good spring training, and the day they were leaving for spring training, I think he was going to AAA, hurt his hamstring, and they rushed him back from that, and he just never hit to the level that he was. He went to Double-A, and he got released. I think it was the hamstring that finally got him, and it's just. Every new year, there's a new crop of guys coming in, right? The draft's smaller now, so there's not as many coming in, but it's just this really hard cycle, and it's hard to tread water at any point. Like, as soon as you tread water, you may be out. So it's really, really hard to watch sometimes because a guy like him was plenty good to be a big leaguer.
When's the last time you were in the box for a real at-bat?
Actually, I did it in the cage probably Nick Gallagher. So Nick got drafted in 18, so probably 17, 18 that it was like over a break and we didn't have guys back, and I just got in there, and I wasn't going to swing, but I did have to take a swing, and it wasn't pretty. I made contact, but it didn't go anywhere. But that's probably the last time that I've been in there. It's funny, you're not there yet, but maybe even to a degree with you playing basketball. Your mind still does all of the things it's used to being able to do, and your body just does not respond. So even when I was playing basketball later in my years, in my early 30s, mid-30s, I would do something that I did a million times before. My body would go there, the ball was not with me. And hitting, I feel like it'd be the same thing. You'd start to cheat, right? Because, okay, I got to get this going because of the velocity, and then you start chasing and you start doing all that stuff. So that's my biggest worry is my mind being so ahead of my body, and then the breakdown of the body. It's just like, what would happen if I actually tried to sprint 90 feet?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I played hoops this morning, and so what you're saying right there is hitting a little close to home right now because I was terrible this morning, especially when you're playing against essentially another version of yourself that's 10 years younger than you. And you're like, well, I got this guy. I know this guy. This was me 10 years ago. Yeah. And then he's just way better than you because he's you 10 years ago. So, that's tough. So back when you were playing, though, the first time we actually met, Marty, was I was pitching for the Whitehawks. You were pitching for the Cascade Reds.
I was not pitching. I was hitting.
You were hitting. I was pitching. You were playing for the Reds. You took me deep in the Worthington tournament. About the whole Reds lineup took me deep that night.
So I don't think I took you deep. I think I thought it was out, but remember they called it. I was a ground rule double is what they said. But I was
going to go back to this. I couldn't actually remember if it was a ground rule double or the lights were so bad in Worthington that nobody actually knew.
All fair.
If it bounced up over or if it went over.
No, I thought it hit like the light pole, and came back. But they said it didn't, and they just called it a double. Whatever. I didn't even think they called it a ground rule double. But whatever. It wasn't a homer. And let's be honest. That isn't the Polo Grounds, to say the least.
Skinned infield.
Yes. Huge mound.
Huge mound.
Yep.
Felt great on that mound. I think I was at the 100-pitch mark about through 4 or 5 innings. Ended up going 7 or 8 before Hazy came in to get me when it was clear that we weren't going to win. Came back the next year, so didn't have a good first experience in the Worthington tournament. Did throw a complete game shutout the next year against Dave Skank and Balltown.
Balltown Braves.
The thing I love most about the Worthington tournament, I'm guessing a lot of these tournaments follow the same path, is like first pitch was about 11:30 at night. And as soon as the game's over at about 1:45, everybody's drinking the beer and they're having the raffles at 1:45. Yeah. How many of those tournaments did you play in through the years?
Well, my first game that I played for the Reds, town team baseball, was in 8th grade. Now, I grew up bat boying for them because all my uncles played. It was a big deal. I mean, a really big deal to play for the Reds. And so my first game I got to play, it was like really important. And so from there, by the time I was a sophomore and even part of my freshman, I played every day that I was there, that I could be there with the high school team. And my cousin Jason Simon was he's a year older than me. Jason and I played a couple years before Roman. Roman probably played more as a freshman, but we played in every tournament we showed up, we played. I mean, I don't know how many tournaments we won and played in. I mean, I stopped playing at 34.
Do you think you got 1,000 games in?
20, probably, roughly.
Close to that?
Yeah, probably, and that's probably between 800 and 1,000. This is a great story, and nobody who's kind of been in a community like this really understands this, but we played my sophomore year, we played at Western Dubuque, who played at Farley, okay? So nobody's going to really know the logistics of this, but Farley's about 15 minutes north of Cascade to the east of Worthington, okay? So you would not go through Worthington to go home in the bus. We played a doubleheader against Western Dubuque. I think we split. Eben Baumover pitched, who now Eben is winning state titles at Van Meter. Great coach. The bus took us to Worthington, and we got out of the bus to play in the championship of the Worthington tournament after the doubleheader was over. We were walking out, the bus shows up, and here's these high school kids getting out in their high school uniforms, and we got in and played that night for the Reds in the championship. And that's what happened. That's what Coach Rolling allowed us. We would play, and if they were playing, I remember driving to Keeler, which would just be into the Wisconsin side, on the other side of Dubuque, and like right after a game was over, jumping in the car and going over and playing. That's what you did.
So Adam McDermott was my age, Cascade Red, Cascade legend as well. When he comes to Iowa Central, we're both playing at Iowa Central, then we both went and played at UNI together. He literally brought a newspaper clipping, I think from the Los Angeles Times, and he posted it on the outside bulletin board of Rick Peterson's office, and it said something like, Cascade Reds win 120 games in a row. Whatever. It was 100 or like 9. It was a crazy amount of games in a row. Number one, how did you win that many games in a row? Number two, why was it in the LA Times?
Okay, so that would have been 2004. Okay,
Fall 2004.
So I was 24. Jason's 25. We had 8-9 guys who were all like in that just out of college, prime like playing time of your career. We were really good.
And McDermott's the Bob Feller Award winner.
Well, I don't even know if Adam played much yet at that point.
Well, he sure was taking a lot of credit.
He probably was on. He was on the team, but our best pitchers were Micah Green, who pitched at UNI, Pat Weber, who you've probably mentioned on the pod before. Crazy legend pitcher back in those days. And then 2 other guys who did a lot, but those guys did a lot of the winning. But we went 64-1. We lost 2-1 to Balltown in the second round of the Worthington tournament.
Was Skank throwing that one?
No, they had a guy named Ray Kleesner, low slot, and if you play the first game at Worthington, there's trees that are just all around the backstop, so the shadows were really bad there. So you watch the College World Series, and if you play at 5 o'clock at the College World Series, and we played a 5 o'clock game at Charles Schwab, the shadows are rough, so it really does a number on your vision as a hitter.
Did you just compare Worthington to Charles
same
Schwab?
Same field. Same amount of fans. But anyway, the shadows were really difficult, and he was a quality pitcher, and he just gave us fits. Like we whatever. We just didn't have a good night. We didn't score. But that we had won like 24 or 25 in a row prior to that. We lost that game, and then we won the rest of the games the rest of the year. So the Worthington tournament was the only tournament we didn't win. We won every other tournament, and we did it in a variety of fashion, like being down late, coming back and winning, blasting people. But anyway, so we're having this season that nobody really ever done, something like that in that league. Now, there have been really good teams that have had a lot of success, but nobody put it together. We were in both leagues. There's 2 leagues, won both of those leagues. So, I mean, you're playing a lot, and all of us are working and doing, it's not like this was what you did. I mean, this is what you did at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every night. And so there was a writer at the Los Angeles Times from Monticello, McDermott. It's not Denny McDermott because Denny's his brother. I'm forgetting his first name.
Last name McDermott. Though?
Last name McDermott from Monticello, but Cascade people. Adam's probably related to him. Who knows? And he wanted to do Terry. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, he wanted to do a story on this, and so he came out and watched us. We were playing like a Sunday after winning a tournament on Saturday night, and we had the league tournament. We're all
dragging a little bit.
Yeah, we hadn't probably done the greatest thing at going to bed at a proper time. And
did you make it to mass in the morning?
Somebody did, and I just touched them the next day. But anyway, so he was there and he did it. We won the tournament that day, and then he did this great story in the LA Times, and it was awesome. He did a great job. Nothing ever came of it, but like there was talk about doing a movie, all this stuff that would happen when something like that gets put in that paper. The other funny story is, I know you had Jeff Clement on the podcast, him and James Peterson, talking about the home run chase. Jeff's older brother, Mike, was my college roommate at Kirkwood. Mike's a national champion right now, which is awesome. And Jeff ended up helping us at Iowa for a year. So I know the family really well. Well, Jeff was playing at USC. And he had told, Jeff was playing for Team USA, and they had a break, and we needed a catcher. Dyersville tournament. And I called Clem, Mike, his older brother. Mike was a catcher. And I was like, hey, we need a catcher for the tournament. You want to come back and catch? He goes, yes. Do you want me to bring Jeff? And I was like, yeah, bring Jeff. So Jeff shows up and catches for us in the Dyersville tournament in his Team USA gear. And Mike's playing third. And so anyway, they just played that game. And Jeff goes back to college. And Skip, Mike Gillespie at the time, who's now passed away but was his coach, had asked Jeff what he did for the summer, after Team USA. He goes, well, craziest thing, I went and played this town team ball, in Dyersville, whatever. And Skip goes, really? Well, that's crazy. And was asking questions. Fine. Fast forward like a couple weeks later, Jeff goes into the locker room, and on his stool, on every stool, was the article on our team.
Oh, that's cool.
He didn't know that was the team Jeff played for. He didn't know that. But he liked the article about, obviously people playing because they love to play. That's why you'd play in a town team. And Jeff he runs into the office and says, Skip, that's the team I played for. that guy's the guy I pitched that I caught. That guy's he's crazy, all this stuff. And so just kind of a full circle deal about how far that stretched. And then how small the world is, just that Jeff happened to play for us that summer for one game. I don't think he had a hit, and I think he punched out one time. I mean, Team USA, what are we talking about here? Come on, Jeff.
Well, that's kind of the beauty of Dubuque County baseball.
Yeah.
And, it ties into the Field of Dreams and just the timelessness of that. Like, you go to some of these small-town tournaments, I mean, it kind of takes you back in time.
Yeah.
Like, my dad pitched for the Whitehawks and from 83 and 84, and he'll go back to Dyersville today and run into 15 people that he played with or like watched those games. I pitched for the Whitehawks literally 2 games, and I'll go to Dyersville and I'll run into like 5 people that I know just from that stuff. But it's beautiful about that area of the state and how much baseball and community means to those people. And it's real.
Very real, and it's been that way forever. They're just carrying on what happened, to their their fathers and mothers, and it's just what it is. I go back there; the Reds are still going. I have cousins that are on that team. It's, there's, I guess it'd be be second cousins or first cousins once removed, whatever. I mean, there's Simon still playing on there. My last name's Sutherland, but my mom was a Simon. It's really important.
I see like some Iowa guys playing. Like Isaiah Fuller was playing. Was he playing for the Reds?
Played for Worthington.
Yeah.
They got him.
I'm still looking at those box
Him
scores.
and Lorenzo Elon got hooked up. I was like, what are you guys doing? Wow, they asked us to play, You did see that. I mean, you don't see it as much now, but there would be guys hiring guys to come in and pitch, that college guys and former pro guys that you would face that were like really good. Ed Sawville from Wilton was unbelievable pitcher that would come back and pitch in those leagues. And you pitched in Worthington, so you know some of the conditions light-wise that you're facing. And it's not a white ball every time either. You're to the bottom of the bag, and they're awfully beat up. And these guys are throwing at the time 90 plus with good sliders. I mean, you face some guys that are not very good, but there's a lot of teams that had really good pitchers that it was a challenge.
I think my dad's first year out of college, he got a job at like the implement dealer in Dyersville.
Mm-hmm.
And now my mom was looking for a job. And once they found out that my dad was a baseball player and moving to Dyersville, I believe the story goes that the bank in Dyersville just said, we'll get you a job, but you got to play. Like, you got to live in Dyersville and you got to play for the team. Because it, like, based on where my mom got the job was where they were going to live. And so they're like, oh, you play baseball, we'll get your wife a job. You got to live here. And it's just hilarious that it meant that much for the town team, meant that much to the community.
So we think the Whitehawks started NIL deals. It's like they were happening in like 82 and 83, and man, they were way ahead of their time.
Way ahead of their time.
That's great. That's awesome, and it's still important. It's great coming from that area. And there's just a connection. Calvin Harris wins a national title. There was thousands of people in that community that had a lot of pride in that. Not as much for me because we recruited them, but it's just a big deal. That stuff goes on. So
you're a big music guy.
You're correct.
Double-sided question here. I don't know if you had a walkout back when you were at UNI. Did you have walkouts?
I did. Mine was Bob O'Reilly by The Who.
Okay, Bob O'Reilly by The Who.
Everybody thinks it's Teenage Wasteland. It's not Teenage Wasteland. It's Bob O'Reilly.
That's something every baseball guy knows, though, because you play the Who Sings This Song between every inning. So it's just a classic game that all dugouts do.
Yeah.
If you had a walkout song today, like if you were playing at the University of Iowa today, what's a walkout?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought too much
like,
about that.
Like, is it Stoney LaRue?
No, it wouldn't be Stoney. I don't know. Like,
is it Rick Heller doing
maybe he
can
do some stuff.
A cover of something?
Probably be like a Turnpike Troubadours, Cody Jinks. I'd figure out some song that they like. I always remember Brett Douglas had Def Leppard. Let's Get Rocked, and I think that is a tremendous walkout. Just like the old Eastbound and Down, that was kind of a part of the UNI program for a few years, that just kind of kept falling down to somebody. I still think those are great. I'd have to think about it. But I would try to stay in the genre of music that I enjoy, which is kind of independent music, not kind of mainstream pop stuff.
You've heard so many walk-up songs through the years. I got to imagine when you just hear a song come on, instantly you think of the three batters that it was their walk-up song.
Yeah. Brandon Douglas was Glamorous. What a joke.
Yeah. What?
Jeez, Brandon. Come on, Brandon. Not surprising, as we know Brandon. It's right up his alley.
The way he'd stick his butt out, too.
Yeah.
Like, he was really playing it up,
I remember Robin Lund telling him, his daughter Abby, who's now will be in med school this fall, played softball at Augustana. He was like, "Oh, Brandon, my daughter loves that song. It's on her Teeny Bop. It's on her Teeny Bop cassette." And Brandon taking so much pride with it. Our walkouts are awful. I don't enjoy hardly any of them. Ben Wilmus's was okay. He had like Bring Sally Up. I forget what the name of that song is, but that's okay. That didn't hurt my ears. But most of it's awful.
One thing that, as I'm watching Iowa baseball and the program grow through the years, big music guy, also a big dugout guy here. It would get real fired up in the dugout. The days, like when I threw the day before and I could just run wild in the dugout the following day, it was one of the greatest days of my life. But one time I was on to pitch, and I think I was the first guy up on a Friday night game, and I think we're playing Creighton or somebody like that, and I'm fired up. and it's the 4th inning, and I'm kind of doing a Kiss impression or something in the dugout, and I'm going. It was Metallica actually, and Heller sees me, and he kind of read me the riot act, like, "Hey man, you're our first guy out of the bullpen. Get it together. I might need to go to you in 2 innings." And now I watch Iowa games on the Big Ten Network, and it seems like anything goes in the dugout. And it's a way looser dugout than anything I remember.
Yeah, those times have changed to a degree. I mean, it just is what it is, and you do need that. It's like this really fine line, right? Because the energy that the dugout can bring you is really important. I can think Ben Butel was kind of our guy this year.
Triton?
Ben Butel,
no, lefty.
Yeah,
Sorry,
left-hander.
Another lefty.
And actually got a defensive Gold Glove. Awesome. Just had a great year. Unbelievable year. And I remember at one point we sent him to the bullpen and somebody else that we just said, "Hey, go be in the pen," because we don't know when we're using them. An inning later, I go to Rick. I was like, "They can't both be in the pen. One of those guys has to be down here because they are the energy givers."
The bullpen or the dugout died.
100%. And you need it. You need it. The game's long. You have to stay focused and locked in. And pitchers, there's guys there that they know they're not playing. They're not pitching that day, and you got to keep them involved. There is a fine line. It needs to be directed at your team. Nothing can be directed at the other team. That's really important to us. And again, you give them an inch and they're going to take a mile. So you're going to have to get on them every once in a while. And there's stuff for me as like kind of an old school guy that I'm just like, I don't like this. But they're really important to the morale and the energy of your team. And so we probably, as we reflect upon you being in the dugout, and we have to talk about your impassioned speech at some point before this is over in Minneapolis. But those guys are really important, and I'm saying this seriously. You need guys like you. You need guys like you that love to play and just are the energy givers. We can't be vampires. We can't be the energy vampires sucking the life out of your teammates by just sitting on your hands and not paying attention, hood up, halfway asleep. Like, we have to be involved. And so that's definitely something that's changed.
You're right that a lot of times if you're watching a game on TV, somebody might think that there's just a lot of high-level intelligent conversation going on in the dugout. It's like, no. Think of the dumbest thing that you could possibly think of right now, and that's what those guys are talking about. But nothing can get a dugout going if, like Heller says before the game, "Hey, we need to win the 3-2 battles."
Yeah.
That type of thing. And all of a sudden the first guy up gets a hit on 3-2. And then it's on.
Yep.
Like, it's on for the whole weekend.
Yep.
You know what I mean, after that. And just one thing can just turn the whole thing
galvanize
around.
everything, right? And that stuff's really important to baseball and having the energy. And the game's long. There's a lot to it. The one thing that's happened going back to the pitch tipping stuff, our guys are so into that stuff that they pick stuff up. It's really important that we'll have pitchers at the end of the dugout come down and be, "Hey, coach, I think he's doing this, this, and this," stuff I hadn't picked up, but they did. And so when you can get them involved in that stuff and they can understand that they can affect the game, even when they're not playing, even when you're not in the box or on the mound or on the field, you can have an effect on the game. If you can, the guy who's struggling, you can pick him up. You can give him some confidence and some belief that the next time up or the next time you're on the mound, you're going to handle it. You can pick up those pitch tips. You can pick up things that they're doing. I mean, you can have a great effect on the game, and that's happened so much from guys just paying attention.
Do bullpen guys at Iowa have to run and get foul balls?
We basically just let it go. You remember at UNI we tried to do that? And we had this guy. I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to. But we had this guy that was like Coach Heller's, one of his number one things he tried to do was get a ball sponsor. So we didn't have to chase that crap anymore. You just let it go. And that happened one year, and then that guy never gave the money. And so, at UNI we could blow by a budget, right? No big deal. We had plenty of it. At Iowa, we just, for the most part, we just let him go. So you bring kids to the park, good chance you get a foul ball.
There's nothing more embarrassing than being a college baseball player searching for a ball in the parking lot at Riverfront Stadium under somebody's car.
or in water if it had flooded to the point where.
I don't think I had to do any of it my senior year.
Yeah.
But my junior year, being a new guy, whether you're a freshman or a JUCO transfer, I had to do that.
Well, the good thing is when you went out and chased it, there's a chance you may find somebody breaking into cars and you could just stop that.
Right. Another thing that happens.
It's a Crime Stoppers thing. It wasn't even a ball. It's like, nope, just go out there, peruse.
Everything good?
Yeah.
Taylor Sinclair's car starting on fire?
Yeah.
Nope. All right, we're good. I'll head back in. All right. Marty, I honestly forgot about my speech in the depths of the Metrodome until right now. Until you said that, I completely forgot.
Well, in today's social media world, this would have caught fire. This was like a Newt Rockney, like Augie Garrido style, get after it. And
a lot less F-bombs than Augie Garrido.
No, and I don't think there were even any F-bombs, if I remember. But this came from such a great place. I want to say this. We're going to joke about this, but like, I'd take $1 million of you because you cared, and I believe I'm trying to think if it was like a midweek game. I don't think it was. I think we were in a tournament up there, and we played like Cal, like New Mexico, and then we ended with the Gophers on Sunday, and we played New Mexico, and it was just the first 2 games we didn't show up. We kind of like, hey, we're playing Cal. Ooh, it's Cal, or we kind of got boat raced, and we were in the Vikings locker room. Right, and that was where we were at, and we were trying to talk about like just the effort that it takes and the focus. We don't care about the wins and losses. We're not carrying ourselves and focusing the way that we need to do just to be competitive. And I just remember you start going into this long impassioned speech of just what it should mean to play baseball and how lucky you guys were, even though you got nothing at UNI. And I remember at one point everything was great, and then you just said, guys, I mean, we're in the same locker room as Randy Moss. and I just remember like immediately kind of having to swallow myself a little bit. But it came from the heart, which all great speeches do.
Yep.
It was off the cuff, which all great speeches come off the cuff. But it was the right speech at the right time, because the next day we played way better. I don't know if we ended up winning. We may have.
I think we won the next day.
I think we beat the Gophers the next day. But it was just better. Guys were running on and off the field, whatever. But that's the comment I remember the most. It was just like, we're in the same locker room as Randy Moss.
I remember the next day because I was rooming with Greg Sabers at the time. And so this is my junior year. So I was about 10 games into my UNI career at this point. And Greg the next day was like, good speech, a little much, like a little too much there.
As only Greg could do.
The thing was, that first year I was at UNI, we had a culture problem.
Yeah.
And so when going back to when we were talking about Heller being loyal and his guys and knowing that my vision is going to be their vision, why that's so important is because one bad apple can spoil the bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to call any names out, but we had a couple bad apples my first year at UNI,
mm-hmm.
and they were spoiling the bunch. We didn't have that issue my senior year, and we had a lot better year.
Yep.
And I would argue we didn't have more talent that next year, but all of a sudden it was just a lot better locker room, a lot better clubhouse. But my junior year, we were battling that culture piece, I felt like, every weekend out, because we'd make 2 steps ahead, and then a couple bad apples start talking shit about certain guys. They start wanting to go against what the coaches were saying, and you might think you know it all, but ultimately it's not ultimately helping the team, because a team, everybody needs to be rowing in the same direction. Yep. Even if sometimes that direction you might have a disagreement. It's like, you know what, for the sake of the team, I'm on board. I got to get on board. I got to buy in. And we had a lot more buy-in my senior year than we did my junior year, and that was part of that speech. And I was a little naive to it at that time, because it was my first couple of weeks there during that season. Now, granted, we had been through the fall, but I was just shocked at how little people cared about playing Division I baseball when that was my dream my entire life. And to see guys like be a bullpen guy and I think I got 2 innings. I think I threw the last 2 innings of the Minnesota game, the game we won there. And seeing guys just be lackadaisical about it, not care, not do this, not do that. It's like, man, this is my dream. I'll go play right field right now. I'll go play center right now. But yeah, it's not everybody, I guess.
You won. Like, you came into the program, you won. You won at Iowa Central. You won at St. Ed's, at everything you did. And it was important. That's what you wanted to be good, but ultimately you were competitive and you wanted to win. And you don't always find that. As crazy as that may sound, as a person that reaches a high level, you do find guys that it just doesn't mean that much to them. It's not that they don't care. It just doesn't mean how it means to you. And you're right. The culture stuff, it takes a long time to build. I mean, and it takes constant attention, everyday attention. And it takes all of this time to build, and it literally takes a day to crash.
Right.
One person to crash. And that's the constant battle. It's a battle every year at UNI, or at Iowa. It was at UNI, and it goes into how you recruit. It goes into your leaders on your team, because ultimately that's where a big piece of it comes in. If the right guys are leading, then even if there's a guy or two that you have to drag along kicking and screaming, it's going to happen because of those guys in the locker room. And when you don't have that, then that's where you really get the struggle.
There's always a good core group of leaders on every team, good or bad. And then there's always a bunch of guys that you can count on. They might not be the leaders, but you know they're on the right side of this.
Yep.
But then there's always those guys in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's if you can just get the guys in the middle to be on the right side, then eventually the bad apples will have to play
They have no
along.
choice, right?
They have no choice. But sometimes if those bad apples are recruiting too many guys out of the middle to join their little faction of the team, it becomes an issue. It becomes a culture issue. And it's and winning cures a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely. The deodorant that covers up all stink, as I learned as a young guy. Winning. You find a lot about who you are and kind of how you're wired when things aren't going well, right? When maybe there's a rough patch, and you find a lot out about people and players and what makes them tick when you're going through that. And we all go through it every year. Rarely are you immune to not having a rough patch, both personally as an individual and your ability to perform, and as a team, not playing the way that you hope you would play. It's in kind of that culture is what allows you to navigate that stuff and either get out of it or it prolonging and lasting for a long period of time. Right. And Rick's done it such a long time and has kind of seen everything. I mean, he's been a coach. He's 58, but he's been coaching for 35 years.
I know.
He got a head job at Upper Iowa when he was 22 or 23. I mean, he's seen it all. So he obviously does a great job in that way, but we're constantly learning, and every generation's different. Every team's different. Every team's wired differently. Every personalities come into the team each year that are different, and just got to navigate those waters.
Marty, this has been fun.
It's been great. Now, I hope this is like not ending Moonlight Graham podcast, because like you've literally gotten to the bottom of which like we have nobody else to really talk to. I hope that's not where we're at.
No. I mean, we got the ex-Dodgers GM coming on, in a week. I mean, I guess that's
got a lot of hard questions for that guy.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about how you would have 5 rookie of the years in a row and you still end up in the tank.
Yeah. I wouldn't go there, but that's fine.
I'm the hard-hitting question guy.
That's true. That's what you have to do. You're a journalist first. I'm
an insurance guy first.
Well, maybe.
Washed up baseball guy first.
Let's just keep pushing the insurance part down as far as we can.
I say that in jest because I work in insurance, and
I
have got a great job, and I've got a great employer. But Marty, in all honesty, thank you for coming. It's great seeing you. Always love talking baseball, and just always love spending time with you.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been so great watching this from the outside, and just what you've done as something that's not as just something you enjoy doing, and bringing light to so many people that across all walks of athletics, whether it be somebody who was in the Olympics as a runner, a golfer, all these people that have great stories to tell and have had a ton of success and not really had maybe an avenue for people to really know about them, has been awesome to see happen. So it's an honor to be on here. We could probably do 1 million of these, and I know that I'm sorry for the 15 listeners you're going to get out of this podcast, but this was great for me.
Well, 15 Sabres listen to this.
Well, that's possible. That's possible, but it might not go a lot deeper than that, so I apologize in advance.
Thanks, Marty. Thank you for listening to today's episode with Marty Sutherland. And you know what? Now that we've had Rick Heller on the podcast, now we've had Marty Sutherland on the podcast, we've had Nick Ungs on the pod, out of that group that I've mentioned that's been on that coaching staff over at the University of Iowa that came from UNI, you still got Robin Lund, who is the pitching coach over at Iowa today, and also Scott Brickman. So open invite to both Robin Lund, who's got a great story, Scott Brickman, who was my pitching coach at UNI. He'd be great on the pod as well. And also Marty Sutherland's college roommate at Kirkwood, Mike Clement, was the hitting coach and the third base coach for the Ole Miss Rebels, who just took home the national championship in college baseball. So all three of those guys, we got to get all three of those guys, I think, on the pod. Robin Lund, Scott Brickman, Mike Clement. I think that would round out this kind of baseball family here. So thank you guys for listening. Special thank you, of course, to the Moonlight Graham Show team, my brothers Andy and Neil. Brian Sandvig, who is the producer of the podcast. Tommy Griffin, of course, is our co-host for a lot of episodes and does our episode write-ups each and every week. He did this week's write-up while on family vacation. Tom Griffin, Dad of the Year. And also Brendan Gargano, who does all of our artwork here on the Moonlight Graham Show. Thank you to the team. And thank you to you, the Moonlighters, for tuning in each and every week. Subscribe, 5-star reviews. Have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.